Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast presented by Zwift, the indoor cycling app that makes training fun. Look who has decided to make an appearance. Benji Naesen's back from his holiday in fake Luxembourg. And apparently, I don't know, maybe the Belgian police need to check some speed cameras. He's hustled back. So round of applause for Benji Naesen being back in time for this Valenciana Bessèges double header. Don't even need you today, Ben. It's not even a triple header. No one even got my triple threat, triple caution, Samir, you're breaking the car reference. No one got it. But Ben, how was your holiday before we get into business? What'd you get up to?
Honestly, pretty good. I was hiking basically every day, so I enjoyed that aspect. I forgot my bike, so that's a sad part of it. But in the end, the hiking made up for the biking. And eventually, I missed the potting a lot because cycling was going on, and every second that I was relaxing, I thought about, well, there's cycling going on. I want to be on the pod. So I'm happy that I'm back, and I'm happy that we can get into talking about cycling again.
Did you see any birds of prey, or were you accosted by them?
I'm afraid I wasn't attacked by any vultures. I saw a squirrel, so that's a win.
All right. Maybe we can do a spin-off flora and fauna of the Continental Europe podcast. Yeah. I'm sure it'd be a great success. Valenciana stage. We'll also have a segment after the results here about should gravel be included in road cycling races. It's been a point of discussion with people weighing in the last couple of days. But first, and Bessèges, of course, we'll recap as well. The first stage 5, 92 Ks. As I said, it's a crit with an hour added on, and they finish in Valencia in the city. They have, it's just a sprint. And apparently, Benji, even though Vlasov had a 30-second lead on GC, you might have been in the car at the time, before live coverage even started, Evenepoel had tried to get in the breakaway, like Sharmig in Saudi Tour. I was like, holy. But apparently he got caught. So, it's just interesting that maybe that's why what he did at Polonia, I guess. He can just break away from people in the flat. Anyway.
Yeah.
Quickstep were controlling, Bora controlling, lots of teams controlling, even Trek were helping because Moschetti won yesterday. They line it out. Intermarché had also added a few riders. Break gets caught. Nibali had been in the break, Benji. Did you see that? What can you explain? Now, you obviously know him better than everybody else. Can you explain what he was doing in a flat break on Valenciana?
He knows that people love him for the attacking rider that he is, and he wants to make sure that he spicens up races a bit more. And what else can he do on the last flat stage of Valenciana? Put some training kilometers in the breakaway. Why not? Put some pressure on. Try some harder watts than in the peloton. And perhaps that delivers a better form in more important races.
You'd hope so. And we'll see how he goes in the upcoming races. Anyway, that break got caught. He was there, I think, with Manuele Boaro, who'd been in a break before. And Zuna 3Ks to go. Evenepoel hops on the front, break caught, sprint time. He does an absurd pull. We questioned his motivations yesterday. Is he pulling because Eddie Merckx is living rent-free in his head about being a bad teammate? Today he answered those critics and just an obscene pull. And he had this time Lampard on the wheel. Benji actually did some detective work yesterday and was sort of the blame was on Lampard for not following Remco up in that stage. But Remco went 3Ks to 1K. Intermarché had their doors blown off, trying to move up to the side of Evenepoel, which sort of as Cavendish said in the Tour, if you want to beat the Quick-Step train, you can't wait from behind Mercu. If you're behind Mercu with sprinter on Mercu's wheel, 300 to go, you're done. They tried to bring up, they couldn't do it. And eventually Lampard was, and then by the time it was 800 meters to go with Lampard starting, sprint was over. Lampard, Swift comes up trying to bring up Viviani on the right-hand side. Viviani elects to go onto Jakobsen's wheel, his third wheel. Mercu sees Swift coming and says, no, goodbye. Through a couple of roundabouts, accelerates, drops Jakobsen off with 160 meters to go, and that's curtains. Jakobsen wins easily. Not as dominant as their first sprint, but easy W. I think this Benji was as good a quick-step train as we've seen all week.
Yeah, I think so as well. Basically, like you said, the Remco part is perfect to line it up at the front, but if another team is in their wheel, then it's basically leading out a different team, just like a few days ago with Intermarché. But now, today, that was not the case because Lampard indeed followed that wheel. Last time he was waiting a bit too long to decide to follow the wheel and then was squeezed off the wheel anyway. So as a consequence, was not in the wheel of Remco, but today it was not the case, and he was in the wheel, which makes sure that they were at the front. And if Evenepoel is pacing so hard at the front and Lampard starts hammering it at the front, good luck for Intermarché to come past. Then, like you said, Merkel being in first with the lead out starting is basically a big chance of the sprinter in his wheel winning this race, unless Ewan is in the wheel of that sprinter, but that's not the case in this race. So all in all, Jakobsen was able to launch pretty late, I would dare to say, and Viviani used the draft but didn't get past and didn't have the power, and eventually, like you mentioned, Jakobsen, the man. Do you think, you probably said this already in the previous podcast, but I've listened to most of it, and I wanted to ask you, do you think that Jakobsen deserves to be in the same tier as Ewan now?
It's hard to say. I don't know. I have very small tiers. So people were saying, and we talk about Vlasov, obviously he's taking out the GC. They're like, oh, you said Vlasov's maybe not even a second tier GC contender. I'm like, yeah, because I have in tier 1 2 guys, both from Slovenia. And then in tier 2, I had 2 guys, one from Colombia, Bernal, and at the time, and Carapaz. So yeah, I have small tiers. That's just how I operate. Maybe people have big tiers. You do your tiers, I do my tiers. But yeah, I think Ewan's better. Ewan is better than Jakobsen, and we haven't seen Bora Bennett yet. They sent 3 different sprinters to Saudi Tour. What about you? I'll throw it back at you, Benji. Like, where do you, or Groenewegen for that matter? Let's talk about Groenewegen and Jakobsen. Where do you have those guys?
I've got Ewan in the top tier. I feel like he's the best rider when it comes to sprinting in the entire peloton. Then I've got Jakobsen in the second tier, in my opinion. Groenewegen in the third tier. So like you said, I've got small tiers as well. And it's a bit of an aspect to it where I try and divide it up, where if a rider has a minimal difference over the other, it's already a new tier. So that's, like you say, the reason that Groenewegen is not on the level of Jakobsen for me. That Viviani is not on the level of Groenewegen for me personally. So yeah, I could have like 10 tiers with the top sprinters in the peloton. But hey, I think that Ewan is the best sprinter right now. And maybe in the future that can come closer together. Perhaps if we see them ride against each other, we'd see a better evaluation of that comparison.
Please God, Tour de France, we can see Jakobsen, Merlier, Groenewegen, Bennett,
UAE Tour?
Ewan. Well, yeah, maybe you're right, Benji. UAE or Oman. Is Ewan staying in the desert after Saudi? Maybe. Anyway, the top 10 in the stage. Jakobsen first, Viviani second, Ben Swift, as I said, did quite a nice job for Viviani. Christoph third, and like he was third yesterday, then Dupont and Ilkovsky Trentin ahead of the man he was probably leading out, Milano. So UAE having sprint issues in both races at the moment. Peñalva, Milano, Barcelo, Mercu 10th. Better from Mercu today, who wasn't actually his normal self, I would say, in the first 2 sprint stages. In terms of general classification, Vlasov takes out GC 32 seconds out of Evenepoel. C-Rod, that's his official nickname, generated
Godriguez.
by Godriguez, yes. Well, A-Rod, C-Rod, maybe doesn't want to go down the A-Rod path. But yeah, C-Rod, the best Spaniard, the 21-year-old for Ineos, 36 seconds behind Vlasov, then Mas Bala, Fulsang, Sanchez, Ciccone, De La Cruz, and Mohoric rounding out the top 10 on GC. So Bora got to be very, very happy with Vlasov taking out the GC here. That's a great start for him. And okay, Giro 4th is good, but this is a nice result. But before we get into sort of the main controversy, that's not a big controversy over the last couple of days, which is should gravel be in road racing? Mention our show partner Zwift. Maybe you're getting back on the bike after winter weather. Maybe you're training for the LRCP Zwift group ride on Tuesday, 6 p.m. UK time, 7 p.m. European time. We want to hit the 350 signups for that, and we're getting pretty close. So check the event description down below in the show notes or the YouTube video description. If you don't know, Zwift is the indoor cycling app that makes training fun with 9 different worlds based on real life and fantasy locations. It has tons of workouts and training programs and a huge community to keep you company whilst you ride. This year, Zwift will host the UCI Esports World Championships at the end of February and also act as the headline sponsor of the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift to continue to level up women's cycling. Thank you to Zwift for supporting the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast as our presenting sponsor. But Benji, the last couple of days, and this has been the fallout since Evenepoel struggled in the gravel or just after the gravel on the Queen stage of the Volta a la Comunitat Valenciana. Should gravel roads be in road cycling? And we had Lampart saying he didn't think it should be in there. It didn't add anything to the race. We had Dan Lloyd, who's on the broadcast side now, saying it added to the race and it increases viewership. We've got Matteo Trentin saying, I haven't heard any rider say anything positive about it. And Bala Puncture. Where do you stand on gravel in road cycling? I don't see it as a binary yes or no. I think there's some shades of grey here.
I agree on that aspect. I'd like to turn it back to the initial stage already, the interview afterwards of Evenepoel. He actually said that Vlasov was the deserving winner there and so forth. And he said one sentence about the gravel section because the interviewer asked, what do you think about the gravel section? And he said, well, I'm happy with one or two or a few gravel sections throughout the season and so forth. But this was a bit unnecessary and felt close to mountain biking and so forth. So that was the quote there. And obviously Belgian media blasted that all over the titles to make him sound arrogant as fuck. But eventually the actual article was a very different sentiment, and he was happy that, well, he wasn't actually blaming the gravel section for his loss. Nonetheless, he also gave the criticism that apparently the organization told some of the riders that have at least said that this was the case, that they would have cleaned the gravel section. I don't know what cleaning the gravel section means. I think it's getting the bigger rocks out of the gravel and so forth. And apparently, according to the riders after the race, that was not done. Now, I haven't spoken to every rider, so this is only from a few riders that I've got this info. So the question there is like, if that is the case, then I feel like it's a bad thing on the organization's part. If they promise that they're going to clean up a gravel section to make it more viable for a race situation, then they should do so, and it shouldn't be after the race that the riders have to notice, well, okay, it wasn't the case. That's my first argument. The second argument is, of course, I think Johan Bruneel was the first one to post it on Twitter with a picture of the Tour de France 1960 or something compared to the Valenciana race, the gravel on the road. That was very similar across those ages, and that riders are not circus animals and so forth. I think that's one argument. Like you said, Daniel Lloyd came with that broadcasting argument where it entertains the people watching. Now, I don't think it would have made too much of a difference on this stage when it comes to the entertainment. Valenciana is not exactly the most out there race, and I think the people that were watching Valenciana knew that this was the Queen stage anyway, so probably we're going to be watching anyway. Now, I think a gravel section of the climb is viable, but I do feel like this one might have been a bit on the edge. And we're hearing this not only from Lampard, but also from Trentin the other day as well. So I feel like riders are the most important stakeholder when it comes to their safety, and they need to be able to decide what is safe and what is not safe. And I don't feel like broadcasters who drive off the entertainment and so forth should be having that much of a say in the entertainment value there. Like, I love seeing gravel, but I'm not the one that needs to ride over it.
How dangerous is it going uphill at whatever? Like in the Gruppetto, they're going to go up that at like 10 k's an hour, 8 k's an hour. They do more dangerous things getting out of the neutral zone. I don't see it as a major safety issue. My biggest problem with this is, and I like sort of gravel segments, but there's gravel and there's gravel, and this was really borderline. Like the size of these rocks, and Brisbaneites will know the Go Track in Brisbane, for example. It's a very, very different road if it's just been groomed, if it's just been wet and then hard pressed and compacted, to when it's been really dry and rutted and big rocks everywhere and four-wheel drives been over it. This was big rocks, and my biggest problem with it isn't the safety. It's that Valverde punctured, no fault of his own. He's had to ride the rest of the climb with a puncture. It's a complete lottery, and cycling already, luck is involved in cycling, but would it have been better, Benji, for the spectacle if Valverde hadn't punctured, they'd stayed on the road, and he and Vlasov had a 2-up battle at the end? And judging from, where Valverde finished with a puncture, he probably would have been, I'd argue that would have been a better spectacle. Though, and as you said, it's hard to decouple, well, are more people watching this because Evenepoel's in leader's jersey, it's the Queen stage, it's hyped up anyway. I do think, think about the Montalcino light stage in the Giro. That's
a big race, though. Like, it's a full stage of like gravel sections all over, and we know that is a stage, the Montalcino stage with the gravel. But I feel like putting it in 21 stages is reducing the effect of the lottery than doing it in 5 stages. Because then you only have 4 stages to fix it. In the other one, you've got 20 stages to fix your
Zero
losses.
stages to fix this. Zero. It was 2 sprint stages afterwards.
Hey, you're right. But I mean, like...
Yeah, I know what you mean.
If you know it beforehand, then you can already prepare that there's gravel incoming. Something like that. But I agree what you mean. It's indeed adding a bit of more of a lottery thing to it. I think that gravel section should be part of road cycling, but I have an issue with the argument of like, it shouldn't be in the first stage race of the season. Like,
that doesn't make sense to me.
Classifying it at the position in the season doesn't make sense for me. It should be the safety of the gravel section, in my opinion, that would be the decision maker. And I personally feel like the riders should have their say in that. And for this one, it seems like a lot of riders were against it.
I think that the riders, and when you look at the photos from Laura Mezziger, it's hard to disagree. The riders were like, what the fuck is this? This is like the size of the rocks in it.
It's like my street.
Yeah, well, I don't know, maybe, but they should have groomed it. I don't have a problem with a gravels, segment. It adds a little bit. The photos look great. Vlasov's attack looks fantastic. It also, maybe Vlasov chose the right gearing. Maybe Vlasov's got better seated power. Maybe he got through the deeper sections better. That's all fine. Full saying ex-mountain biker wanted to try and use maybe his technical skills on it. But They should have groomed it. There are limits to it. And also people saying, oh, well, there's Roubaix, there's Strada Bianca. It's like, that's A, those are both one-day races. B, the entirety of the race, you attune your bike and prepare. You ride a completely different bike and setup for those sections. So I think we really need to think about the gravel in stage racing. The problem is, Benji, we should ask the audience, really, because we are complete degenerates who will literally watch any form of bicycle racing, including when the Saudi Tour live coverage went out. We watched the kids on balance bikes crashing each other. Watch that. So we should probably ask the audience, like, does a gravel section here or there pique your interest, make you want to watch? I guess it probably does add a little bit on balance, but yeah, I don't know.
Next year, Valenciana is going to have a descending gravel time trial.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think this was that dangerous. I just think it was a huge lottery, and riders were just like, this is a bit unnecessary. I mean, the Brunel quote about circus animals, I was like, I get what you mean in certain aspects of cycling. I'm not sure this is the hill to die on in that respect. And I also would say sometimes, Benji, this is a pro rider podcast. Mm-hmm. Generally speaking, I would say sometimes the riders do things which are not always right, even though the majority of them, like, for example, the Giro stage in 2020, where they just didn't want to ride that day. The majority didn't want to. I still feel bad for the organizer on that day. But yeah, let us know down below. I think we will continue seeing more gravel. We see major bike brands, etc. But gravel. When it's a cyclocross bike, right? Like, isn't it? I'm probably shooting myself in the foot with sponsorship there, but yeah, it seems to be a big focus of the bike industry overall, and we'll keep seeing it. I would expect Evenepoel should probably just keep skipping gravel races. Anyway, Vlasov took it out, best on that day, and he wins GC. Good stuff for Bora Hansgrohe. Now moving on to our Etoile de Bessèges Tour de Garde wrap up. It was the stage 5 time trial, 11 kilometers long. We had Benjamin Thomas, who'd done well on the previous stage, leading the general classification. Good time trialist, but on his new Cofidis setup, you never know how you go on a new setup. Bertiol was second, 7 seconds behind. Johannesson third on 8 seconds. Latour on fourth on 25 seconds. I forgot Latour was actually quite a good time trialist. And so third for Johannesson wasn't guaranteed. He's a bit of a weaker time trialist. This is the TT with an uphill 2K, 2.5K, 6% kick at the end. Early good starters, Jay Vine, who I don't think has done much testing or whatever, but incredible TT from him. He finished 22 seconds off Ganna, who, of course, smoked it. It's a 41k an hour average, so not a TT that really suits Ganna that much, but he smoked it, Ganna, of course. Pedersen, really, really good time trial, looking good. Pedersen's targeting yellow jersey in the Tour de France, by the way, in Denmark. Second on 7 seconds. In terms of GC, Benjamin Thomas kept his jersey. the leader's jersey. Huge win for Cofidis, given that Lotto won as well in a
Yes.
2-1 race, points-wise. Third on 10 seconds, Mollema fourth on 11. Then Gernelak for Arkea, write that name down, on 18. Bettiol sixth, couldn't beat Thomas. He was 9 seconds behind him. Then Latour Vine, Ulysses, and Tiberi, a nice TT. Johannesson finished on 34 seconds. So no changes to the top three. And yeah, Thomas takes out GC, Benji, and he's looking good for Cofidis. Must be rubbing their hands getting him off FDJ.
Yeah, I think so as well. And they were pretty happy with Kokar as well so far in this race.
Yeah.
So I think combining those, we saw Hachal on that hill stage as well, Monbuk. Yes, so the combination of those riders seemed to work very well here. And yes, I honestly was expecting him to keep the jersey. Bettiol did win this time trial like 2 years ago, if I recall correctly. But in the end, his time trial has been a bit weaker the last years than that year. So, and to be honest, Thomas is in the best shape that I've seen him ever. So that's the reason I thought Thomas was going to keep it, regardless of what Bettiol was doing. Now, when it comes to Johannesson, we're saying he's a weak time trialist or a weaker time trialist. I'm kind of surprised that he kept it on 34 seconds on this one. I was fearing that it would have been worse. So there's still an option there that if he fine-tunes that a bit more, that he gets better at that as well throughout the next couple of years, because obviously he's a young guy. Antonio Tiberi, also a very strong time trial, but relatively expected from that rider when it comes to his time trial. And when it comes to GC, he's not up there, but I vaguely recall him doing well on the climbing stage as well. So promising in that aspect as well. I think it's just curious. I forgot that Mollema was in this race until today.
Yeah, I know. I thought he was normally we would have expected him to be. Well, I thought he was the Trek rider yesterday, Benji, on the mountain stage. So I was like, what the hell? Who was it? It was Tiberi. Yeah, I thought, Tiberi, it's Mollema. No, it was Tiberi. But I mean, you say you were worried, you feared for Johannesson. No, Benji, he's an enemy of the podcast.
He's not.
Here. I declared he's an enemy of the podcast for finessing.
I listened to it, and I disagree with it.
But yeah, Benjamin Thomas looking really good. Oh, sorry, Benjamin Thomas, cousin of Geraint Thomas. I got a hot take, Benji. Alpes and Phoenix have to take Jay Vine to the Tour de France. Have to. He's their best option for winning a stage in mountain stages. He's better than Murisa for that. They're not exactly stacked in that regard. Best option there. And he's not afraid to get his hands dirty. I sound like Bottles in that prison movie. Anyway, he can get his hands dirty on flat stages, chasing the break. And he did it in the Volta already. So if they're controlling from early years. So I think he should be in their Tour de France team. Maybe even go top 10 GC. I think he can top 10 GC.
I would have him go for a stage and let him partially domestique.
Yeah, you're right. Don't you think that makes sense? Like, what other climbing options do they have? If they don't take him, they're kind of riding a line through 35-40% of the stages.
Well, perhaps that's their goal, just ditching those stages, focusing on the back of the race, where they're going to try and get the likes of their green jersey goal person over the climbs.
True, but he can help with that as well. Also, he's not 60 kilos. Like, he can, I don't know. Obviously, I am incredibly biased, but I think there's makes something a lot of sense. Yeah, it's like, if this was Ineos, it'd be obviously an outrageous statement, but Alpecin are just not that stacked
Question.
in that regard.
Does UNOX need to get a wild card for the Tour de France because they requested it?
Do they? So who is it between? So there's, I can't keep up. Obviously, the French Pro Conti teams will get it, right? So Arkea have it by right, do they?
Yes.
Okay, so then there's B&B have to get it. And then how many other spots are left? 1 or 2? Total
Honestly, no clue.
I think there's 3 spots. Total and B&B have to get it because that's the rules. Well, not the rules, but French Pro Conti teams. Yes, the law. And then there's 1 spot. As if you would send anyone else except UNOX. Like, I do expect the most likely outcome is that UNOX will be at the Tour de France this year. I personally hope to see them there. Benji does as well. One of our favourite teams on the podcast, and just exciting racing all the time. Charming at Saudi, etc. But we hope you enjoyed this recap. I'm glad Benji's back. Next week we have Bahrain preview dropping. Sepp Kuss interview we had to move to Tuesday because there was too many podcasts we were uploading this week. We wanted to give it space to breathe. Do not forget about our first group ride on Zwift on Tuesday evening European time. And yes, we will be having other times throughout the year, but first one, 6 p.m. UK, 7 p.m. European time this Tuesday, the 8th of February. Thanks to all for your support, as always. We'll see you in the next one. Ciao.